All right, well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the August 28th meeting of the Lake Forest Historic Preservation Commission. Commission's here tonight to work together with all of you, property owners, neighbors, and architects, to continue the tradition that was established nearly 40 years ago in this community. That tradition is a review process that allows community members to work together to preserve the qualities and unique character that make Lake Forest a special community. City of Lake Forest is committed to conducting open and democratic meetings, and to achieve that goal, meeting procedures have been adopted by the Commission. A copy of the procedures is available at the back of the room on each agenda. As always, it's the intent of the Commission to help manage the development and growth of the City of Lake Forest with a keen sense of preserving the historic structures and open space in the city for all its present and future residents. Our goal is to move each petition before us tonight through the review process as quickly as possible while balancing the interests of the petitioners, neighboring property owners, and the larger community. And we'll start the evening with the introduction of the commissioners.
Susan Athenson.
John Travers.
Bill Ransom.
Kurt Pairitz.
Mary Ellen Swenson.
Robert Alfe.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Let's see, we have a set of minutes from our July session, and I'll ask if anyone has any comments, corrections, or other points of order on those minutes. If not, I'll ask for a motion to approve.
I'd make a motion to approve the July 24th, 2013 minutes as submitted.
So the motion's been made by Commissioner Ransom. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by everybody on my left. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? And so that passes. We officially have approved some minutes. All right, first order of business is a returning petition. This is a continued consideration for request for certificate of appropriateness approving the bike shelter for the East Lake Forest train station. I don't know how anyone could have a conflict on this, so I guess no one does. So I think we get a staff report from you on this, Megan. Or is this just a presentation?
So I'll give some background information on the project. This item was before the commission previously a couple months ago as an introduction to the project. The commission action is requested for this item. The project is a bike parking shelter at the East Lake Forest train station. Over the past year and several months or several years, there's been a lot of increased activity at the East Lake Forest train station. There's the farmers market going on, there's commuter bus parking, there's potential tenants in the newly restored train station. So as part of that, the city is really looking at that corridor and looking to make some infrastructure improvements to really help circulation in that area and provide for safe areas for bicyclists and pedestrians within the central business district. Currently, there is the McClory bike path that runs along the the Union Pacific Railroad tracks. That path has a gap between Illinois Road and Woodland Road. This project is part of a larger scale project that the city is working on to really provide that connection for bicycles and pedestrians in the city. The city is currently working to obtain grant funding to fund a large chunk of that bigger project, the bigger infrastructure project. We have received grant funding for this aspect of the project, the bike parking shelter. And the request before the commission this evening is the design of the shelter and the placement on the site. At the last meeting, the commission provided some really good direction and input with respect to where the structure should be located, how the structure should relate to the train station and to the other street furniture in the area. And we do have two representatives from Altamanu, who's the city hired as a consultant, also working with T.Y. Lin Engineering to really make sure that the site work does flow nicely between those two points on the path. So with that, I'd like to introduce Orenthal and Phil from Altamanu, and they'll give you some more detailed information on the proposed structure, design, and materials.
All right, thank you very much.
Hi.
Hi, guys.
How's it going? Password, please.
Apparently, she's not going to tell us all the passwords.
That would be good.
Probably typed it wrong. Try this again.
Thank you. Okay, so here's the existing structure once again. Given an overview, brief overview of the project that Megan simply just explained a little while ago. We're proposing as part of the larger part of the project, we're gonna make a connection from the existing bike path. Here and here, it will cross between the parking lots. It'll provide a bike path instead of how the bikers currently just cut through the parking lot. This will preserve that or create a connection between these two parts of the existing path. So here, where the proposed connection crosses in front of the train station is the area that we're going to propose to put our new bike shelter. What we decided on from the last meeting is that it will be something that doesn't contrast with the historic structure. So here's the final location that we settled on. We discussed at the last meeting moving it to the north side and dropping it down about a foot. So as you can see at ground level, you'll walk up to an elevation of about 3 feet, which would be on level with the existing parking lot. To get to the shelter pad itself, you'll go down the ramp and drop another foot. So to be sunken a foot or so down from the current level of the parking lot, but raised up from street level. We're gonna propose some trees in front to sort of screen it a little bit and add more decoration. So here's a section of what the proposed new structure will look like. Here's another image just showing that we're gonna preserve the existing tree grid as it stands. We're gonna have our smaller ornamental trees within here so it won't really clash with what's there. And here are some perspective views of what we're proposing. Here's the structure that we've selected. It's going to be a light metal structure, the translucent roof. The roof will allow more light to get in to where people are locking their bikes up, and it won't be a massive, bulky structure that conflicts too much with the existing train station. Here's what it will look like possibly once the ornamental trees are added. Here's another closer view of it. As you can see, we're going to use a darker painted metal here, something to match the existing ornaments, the existing street lights, the site furnishings that are in the area already. Here's what it may look like with the ornamental trees added again. And here are pictures of it used in other places. It's just a slide showing the existing conditions.
Okay.
So,
Any questions or comments from commissioners?
I have, oh, sorry.
Sure, go
I
ahead.
have one. I thought that at the last meeting, we had decided that it would be a more traditional design as an extension of the existing train station. I didn't think that we had recommended that it be contemporary. I'm totally thrown by this
I
design.
think we wanted to see options. maybe.
Yeah, I think,
We were shown 4 or 5 pictures, and I thought that
Yeah.
we all liked the Kenilworth train station photo. It was a cream painted wood, and we said that we liked the fact that it would be an extension of our current train station. Am I totally?
my recollection was
You
that
wanted
there seemed to
contemporary?
be some disagreement, but the majority of the commissioners came down with some more contemporary.
I thought it was,
I do recall your comments and you leaning that way, but
yeah.
my
okay.
recollection
I
was
also
it
thought
was,
that when we brought that up, they said that that wasn't within our
budget?
Current budget. Is that correct?
Yes, that is my recollection too. I think this one was,
Okay.
yes.
No, I remember that too, that we were talking about that, but wasn't it that it had to be some kind of prefab construction based on the grant that you had?
Yes.
Well, there were some prefabs that were traditional that they showed us that you said could be made. Anyway, okay, good question.
So this was not in the July meeting, right? It was the June meeting, I think, and the discussion was centered around how the project is funded. I think there's some specific requirements for the kind of structure that's available for the funding that was.
Oh, I wasn't at the June meeting.
Yeah.
Maybe it came up at May and I wasn't at June.
Yeah, I don't
Well,
think
it was
it was in
just the
June.
one meeting.
It was one, yeah, whatever that was.
Only one meeting.
Previous
So-
meeting.
You were there for
Whichever
it,
one
and I
you
was
were-
there
Yeah,
for it.
okay, so it was just one
And we
meeting.
agreed.
Okay.
Yeah.
I-
Well, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I have a question. Are we just considering the structure itself? I mean, the Preservation Foundation did bring up some comments about, the path and the stone wall and things like that, but just wondering what we're approving today and what we're looking at.
Right, the commission is looking at the structure itself, the style of structure, the material color of the structure. And I think Commissioner Swenson, there was discussion at the last meeting about what the style of this structure should be, and I think your fellow commissioners were correct. It was a split discussion, and I think given the parameters for the grant, this seemed to be an appropriate solution to really blend in more with the street furniture, while not contrasting with or detracting from the historic train station. So I think the commission really gave us some good direction on the siting of the structure to really make sure that as you're driving down McKinley, the sight lines of this structure, as it's proposed this evening, are limited, given the traffic and the view corridors down McKinley. I think with the addition of the landscaping that's shown, and the dark color of it, it will blend into the landscaping.
I have a question about the roof that's being proposed. It's, could you go over that a little bit? My concern is its durability and its weathering, what it's gonna look like after being exposed to the elements for a while. We occasionally get hail and such, and, dropping branches, and I don't, if you could comment on that.
From what I've been able to tell from speaking to the manufacturer, it's going to be this polycarbonate, as you can see in the upper corner here, that it's run through their tests, and it's been used in sites around the Midwest, and it's pretty durable from what they've been able to tell me.
So it's going to be made out of plastic?
Yes.
It's a polycarbonate.
That's Lexan, isn't it? The same thing.
I think Lexan is like a brand name for polycarbonate, yeah.
So we could expect that it's going to, get scuffed up over time and
Looked like plastic.
look like plastic.
Is this going to be translucent or just clear, or what? Which is it?
Translucent.
So it's going to be like a milk kind of a finish?
Kind
to
of,
it?
yeah. It's sort of like it looks like opaque glass, kind of. It'll allow light through, but it won't necessarily be clear.
Now, this isn't necessarily your question, but this might need to be cleaned from time to time. Is there somebody going to do that, or, because this could be all stuck up with leaves and dirt and
Birds.
all kinds of stuff after a while. Is that in the plan, that somebody would clean that off?
Certainly, standard maintenance of the structure would occur
Okay.
through city staff.
Is that the city's responsibility to
Yes.
maintain? Is there any lighting proposed for this structure?
At this point, there is no lighting proposed. I think potentially as the path is further along, there might be some low-level lighting associated with it. But at this point, with a translucent cover, there are street lights in that area. It is a pretty well-lit part of town, the central business district. So at this point, there aren't any additional lighting proposed.
And was there any other alternatives looked at for the roof besides this polycarbonate?
Another option would be a metal roof. It would be stronger, obviously, but we felt that it would give the structure a certain heaviness, and it would help to contrast more with the existing station.
Yeah, yeah,
Why
I
wouldn't you
agree.
use opaque glass?
Opaque glass.
I think the issue with glass that we would see is the durability. You know, if a large tree branch or something falls on it, it might crack a little easier than the polycarbonate.
Now, would the polycarbonate turn yellow like plastic does over the years?
That's something we could ask the manufacturer for some more information on, I think. I don't know.
Is it difficult to change out the roof once it's put in? I mean, after 5 years, if this is, is
Quite a
this,
valid question.
you
I
know,
think,
if this is weathered and stuff, and we're thinking, boy, it looks,
I mean, I'm sure it's
Yeah.
possible to change out the roof.
anything's possible.
I don't think they're necessarily designed to be moved in and out, but it is, you know, the polycarbonate is kind of sandwiched in between some layers of metal in the structure. So I'd have to ask the manufacturer about that.
Yeah, I think I'd prefer to see something more natural than a plastic that might yellow over time.
Well, I like the idea of keeping it light, but I do worry about its durability and what it's gonna look like after it's weathered for a while, but, you know, and if any comments you may have to leave, that would be appreciated, or
I mean,
the staff.
As
you
far
know.
as if it's between glass and polycarbonate, in our experience, the polycarbonate is usually more durable than glass. For a lot of light fixtures, we see manufacturers moving to more of a polycarbonate material. They tend to have more impact resistance than glass, so if somebody were to throw a rock at it or something, it would probably withstand that impact a little bit better. The other thing with the way this roof material is kind of designed with it has like ribs inside a couple of layers of plastic, so it helps with that sort of translucent look, and I think would help deter the sight of any kind of scuffing or marring on it, since it's a very kind of opaque. It's not like a film that you put on glass. It's like built into the structure of the polycarbonate itself.
But with that type of design, it also would probably catch everything and hold everything up there rather than shed stuff off the roof.
It'll be smooth on the top and on the bottom. There's actually a couple layers of polycarbonate, and in between that are ribs that kind of support it together. So on the surface of it, I think it would be smooth. If anything were to get, you know, kind of stuck on there, I guess you could remove it, you know, power wash it or something if it, you know, gets stuff from trees, sap or something on it.
So in this picture, it's hard to tell from the size on the screen, but there looks like, and maybe it's the one before that. I don't know, maybe you got slightly different pictures. Actually, you just have less pictures. On the sheet that we have, there's more pictures, but go one more. No, you don't have the same one. So there's two variations that show up in the packet pictures. One of them has what looks like, as you described, a thickness to it, where there's a top layer, a grid, and then a bottom layer. Then there's another variation that's shown in the upper right-hand corner of our, whatever page it is.
Looking at it.
Doesn't have a bottom layer.
Right here.
One has like an open end, and the other one,
The upper right hand,
This one
well.
and that
yeah,
one
theirs
has
is
a closed.
different from the-
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he was talking about this one and this one. It looks thicker here, I think he was saying.
Yeah.
This one doesn't look as thick.
I turned mine on.
Yeah, there you go. It's so the middle one on the bottom versus the one in the upper right-hand corner. The middle one on the bottom has a thickness to it with a side panel that looks like it's 6 inches kind of thick-ish. And then the one on the upper right has no thickness to it, just has a top layer.
Yeah, I think it's actually the difference in the angle that you're looking at it in the photos. I think they're both the same.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
The vertical supports connect to that kind of arched piece that supports the roof.
I see.
And then there are some lateral beams that are set on top of that, and on the top of those lateral beams is where the translucent roof sits.
So the
So are
beams-
both overhanging on these
They are
pictures?
both. They're both overhanging. The one that's more straight on from the end, the more elevation shot, you sort of lose that perspective because of the angle of it.
So that cross beam set back from the
It
edge
is.
of the roof?
right.
Okay, I see what
Got
you're
it.
saying.
Which base will we get? The square one at the top right, or the oval one, or will it be just inset into the concrete?
I think
without
we
it-
envisioned it just being set right on the concrete without
with the-
without a
okay.
raised base.
Is there a color proposed for this?
We would look to probably match the existing streetlights that are in town, so I think it's kind of a dark bronze color for the metal.
Megan, I have a quick question, just to review, we're just looking at tonight the style, the material, and location of the bike, shelter. Are we gonna be seeing the landscape come back to us using that?
The landscaping as shown this evening is consistent with the vision for the full corridor, where there's a rhythm of trees that allow views into that area, similar to what it is now. There is a lot of work that will have to be done along that whole corridor, which will require the removal of the vegetation. So that will be replanted, and that's a large part of the grant application that we have in, is request for the plant materials.
So if we have comments on the landscape, do you wanna hear them now, or would you like us to withhold them and see them at a later date?
Well, you might want to give them now, because I didn't think the answer to that question was, yes, it's coming back. I think the
Didn't
answer
sound
is
like it.
that's not necessarily our purview, so this is,
As the guy who's gonna do the landscape plans, I'd love to hear them now.
there you go.
Because there is a significant part here that's gonna be landscape, and with the elevation changes, and even on in your site section, this one, there's no sidewalk here, and if you look there now, there's a sidewalk today along the road. So there are some issues there.
There was a new sidewalk installed recently along McKinley. That is really a temporary bus parking area, so that was put in to accommodate some of the commuter buses, some of the shuttle buses that are required or are being offered for the BMW tournament that's coming to Lake Forest. So the larger plan really, it's not working around those improvements. That was really a temporary installment at that location.
So, but you're gonna keep the sidewalk, right?
She's saying no.
They're gonna rip that sidewalk up then when it's done?
The pathway is actually going to be extended through the central business district, so from Woodland to Illinois. So that will, in essence, take the place of the sidewalk that's there now.
Well, because that's one of the concerns I have about having pedestrians and bicycles on one path, because I thought maybe that was the solution there, to have a sidewalk separate from bicycles. Because if you think about that, if you're walking on that bike path, that's kind of a dangerous intersection there. You know, if you're walking north or south on that bike path, it can be kind of dangerous. So I thought it would be a good thing to separate, have a sidewalk and a bike path, sidewalk down low, bike path up high. So you're kind of keeping that grade change too, right?
Right. There's
'Cause
very
before we
little
talked about-
room to fit the path. The bike path will be a wider path than the sidewalk. So it is envisioned as a multi-use path to meet, the IDOT standards for that type of use. With respect to the overall plan, that infrastructure change is really a presentation that has been provided to the city council and has been accepted by the council to allow the grant applications to be submitted. So I think the Historic Preservation Commission's role is really to look at this structure as it relates to the train station and to the site, given the proximity to the station and the location within the historic district. If you have comments that we can forward to our consultants about the landscaping, we can certainly pass those along. But this is the piece of the project that the commission is asked to take action on.
Can I ask a question? So because, do I assume correctly that the standards, the 14 or 17 standards, which we generally look at when a resident comes to us with a project like this, are applicable to this project also?
Yes, I think the commission can review the project in the context of the standards.
Okay, and so typically when one of these projects comes before us, both the owner, applicant, and the staff list out the 14 or 17 standards and tells us how or how not the project corresponds with those standards. And that was not, at least in my opinion, uniquely not done in this case. And I found that to make it difficult for me to evaluate this project. But I did sit down and write out the 14 standards and attempted to evaluate the project in those terms, and it raised some issues for me, at least, with respect to the project. I'm wondering, do you all have the usual sort of schedule of the 14 or 17 standards with a rundown of how you feel this project corresponds with respect to each of those standards?
I think in this case, because it is a unique project, we really outlined the staff report to summarize the project for you. We can certainly prepare findings based on the Commission's discussion this evening. But I do feel like that the standards are met. It is relating not directly to the traditional architecture, but it is a compatible structure. It does allow for views through the structure to maintain a rhythm along the street. The landscaping does provide for a regular rhythm that's existing today. So I think you can find positive findings for this project.
Right, and so I attempted to do that, and you know, I found actually some things that were not compatible, and because I'm not one of the architects on the board, I feel to a certain extent that it would be better for the city staff and its representatives to, in the usual manner, delineate the standards and how this project compares with it. I mean, just for example, in terms of materials, polycarbonate is real different than, and metal, you know, steel is real different than, you know, stucco and wood and tile and shingle, just to state the obvious. Likewise, I have a certain degree of concern that when you look at a direction other than from the south, say you look at this, at the train station from the north, off of McKinley, you might see a height differential, you know, adverting to standard 1 height, where in fact the roof of this structure might appear to cut the historic train station in half. And while I did, you know, list comments for each of the 14 standards, some of which are problematic for me, I just wonder whether it would be premature to act on this in the absence of the owners and city staff's views on how this project corresponds to these standards. And, you know, again, not to browbeat you, but just thinking about roof shape. You know, we have roof shapes in general at the train station, which are cross-gabled or pyramid in form, and this is a kind of, I mean, it'll present either as an arc or a
An ellipse.
or a flat line, maybe perhaps linear, depending upon you know, where you are in relative to it, and that seems, you know, very different in terms of roof form. Again, I don't want to browbeat you about it. I just think it would be better to have the usual and normal rundown of the standards.
And that's why I expect if we're reviewing the train station like we had before, why wouldn't we be reviewing the landscape for that? Remember when we reviewed the design of the train station?
Well, I think the petitioner can come to us with whatever limited petition they want. The extent of the petition I don't think is dictated by the commission, so I understand what you're saying, but, I'm of the feeling that we can't force the petition to enlarge it in some way if they're just asking us to act on something else. Whether they run into trouble later because they didn't bring, the petition to us, every aspect that they might have needed to get the commission's approval. I'm not troubled by that. Troubled by the, the lack of standards that are being, or the fact that they haven't listed out each standard. When you talk about compatibility, I'm not sure that you and I agree what compatibility means. I don't know that, to me, and I'm not trying to put words into your mouth. To me, compatibility might not be mimicking something, but whether if it's in the, appropriate in the context of where it's set and, its use and, things like that, to me is part of the aspects of compatibility and, certain things. So I'm not bothered by those things. And that's my opinion. I understand, that there may be disagreement, and oftentimes everybody on the commission disagrees with me, so I'm okay with that.
Any other comments or questions?
Well, I have another question too.
Sure.
Just to review, now why, there's a bike shelter there now, right, on the north side. Why are they relocating it? Why isn't that sufficient enough?
So, mind if I take a chance of making a comment and also maybe helping explain that? And I'm not the advocate for the project, but I think there's a couple things that are worth noting. So I appreciate the difficulty the staff faces in trying to do their best, both the Historic Preservation Commission staff and the city staff, frankly, to find creative ways to fund projects and to find ways to improve the city through the use of people's money other than my own. And so I applaud that effort. I think that's good. And I think this is part of that. We see, the train station is a continuing project. And when we get funding available for the roof, we do the roof. The masonry is dying out there, and, it'd be nice if somebody would donate some money to do some bricks or something. But the masonry is probably the next project, and even in the pictures, you can see the peeling paint. So this is a tough structure. It requires a lot more work, needs a lot more help. And the maintenance of the landscaping in front of it and the paths in front of it all are also areas of neglect, or at least of where they've run their course. The useful life is beyond. And so I think it's great that there's been a creative way to try to broach some of these subjects and advance the improvements. For me, I think there's a really nice, elegant solution that for a bike shelter that is in the vernacular of the building, that could be adjacent to the building, nearby the building, in a similar location to the existing one. And I also think that this is a nice way to resolve it with the structure not being complementary to the building, but being, or I shouldn't say complementary, but not being in the same vernacular as the building, but complementary in a modern style. And I like that it's pulled off away from the building a little bit in that design, because it's like any other new structure that sits nearby, an older structure. It can work together, but it doesn't have to be the same thing. So I actually prefer it on the street as opposed to like right up against the building, if you will, for that reason. I do worry about the plastic, polycarbonate, Lexan, call it what you will. I think that will be a maintenance item that the city will have to look after, just like other things that they have to look after, and make sure that that doesn't get somehow worn or not appropriate looking. But it's a light structure. I actually like, I think a metal roof on this building would not be an improvement to this building. I think it would look more like a tollway shelter than a bike shelter. So I like a very light shelter myself. I wish we could see more of the landscaping. I think the landscaping is where you should spend your money on this deal. I think that this is this is the front and center, postcard of Lake Forest, the train station. So I'd love to see this really well landscaped. I'd love to see the trees actually get planted that you're showing in the elevations. I'd love to see some landscaping where the old bike shelter is now, because that seems like there's a pretty tired kind of entrance to the building right at the pavement there itself. And I do think that the sidewalk that they're putting in as a temporary sidewalk is potentially too close to the street. It'd be nice if there was some separation off the street from your permanent situation. It's not right now you got parked cars and you have a sidewalk right there. And so I get that that's temporary. I hope that the permanent solution has a little bit of relief there myself. So my only comment on this is that, I think we're going to continue to see proposals on the train station a piecemeal basis based on when funding is available and how the projects get done. Generally supportive of this, but I'm a little concerned of the Lexon. So that's the only comments I have.
Can you explain a little bit more about the finances? How much is the grant and how much is the project going to cost in total? And where we might expect the other money to come from?
I can tell you that the just for the addition of this bike shelter here, not counting the connection of the bike path itself, it would be around mid-$90,000 to purchase the structure, place it down, pay for all the bike racks, and provide the concrete pad. It'll be in the 90s.
That doesn't include any of the landscaping improvements around it, which we see that as more of a part of the overall trail project.
How much do you estimate the landscaping to be?
For the overall trail project?
Yes. This project in sum.
I don't have those numbers with me, unfortunately.
Okay.
And how much will the grant be for this structure?
I mean, I guess I would like to know what the line of questioning is pursuing. I mean, it's okay to pursue it, but it's not normally part of what we are allowed to consider.
Exactly.
So for any other petitioner. So,
Chairman, that's my point.
Okay.
In the material prepared by the petitioner, they don't go through the usual 14 or 17 points, and instead they talk about how this fits into their grant funding. So, I mean, they're the ones who brought it up, not us. And instead of relying on the usual design criteria, which I agree with you, is really what the only things we're allowed to look at. They've directed our attention to how this, and you have too, and how this fits into the grant.
maybe, perhaps, and maybe erroneously, but my feeling on it is that I can be sensitive to the economic realities of life without, when someone comes to me with a historic home and says, rather than tearing down this home, I'd like to build a kitchen, but it doesn't conform to the requirements of the code specifically. I don't need to know how much the kitchen costs to understand the economic implications of the request. And really, so I understand where the request comes from then, and I can evaluate the request based on architectural considerations. So I think it's enough for us here, and if the staff wants to answer more questions on the cost, it's enough to understand that there's an economic reality to why the project was conceived. Now the question is not for us to evaluate whether it's economically viable, but it's whether it's architecturally compatible and whether we like it. And we can say no. We can recommend to the city council that it's not the right thing to do. So that's the kind of thing we should. But it's certainly the basis of the project is funded in the economic reality of there's limited funds, which we see that all the time. It's not really what we're supposed to be evaluating, but that's why we're seeing this proposal, I think. I mean, is that fair? Is that a fair? Otherwise, someone would, obviously, there's a gold-plated solution out there somewhere that would be really nice, probably.
I guess I would just add the other unique aspect about the train station is the city does not own the train station. And if the city doesn't step in and take care of it, we know that this station is not something that the railroad company will maintain. In other places, they've gone to very different stations. So I think it is balancing a whole variety of interests, trying to recognize the historic nature of the train station, but also coupling that with an infrastructure project, which a piece of that is the structure that's before you, but the whole trail system, the landscaping, that's part of a much larger infrastructure project. So it's a different kind of project than you normally see. So I understand that it doesn't fit neatly into the boxes that you usually go through.
Any other questions or comments?
I guess I didn't get my question answered about, and maybe I missed this from the last time we talked about this, why the current bike station is not sufficient, why they decided to go do with a new one.
The existing structure really isn't adequate to accommodate the activity that occurs at that station. There's also, for a long time, been a desire to pull the bikes off of the train station, to really focus the restoration of the train station as one aspect, and then separate the bike parking from that, so that to remove the clutter from that wall of the train station. So there's been a long-standing desire to do that. I think some of these availability of grant funds for this type of infrastructure project has really sparked the city to look at this project and think at ways that we can reduce that clutter.
I have a question. How dry do you, I mean, the whole reason of putting this bike structure up is because I guess it will keep the bikes dry and protected. How dry will it keep the bikes? I mean, you know, when it rains and it's windy,
Can
I mean,
flip to the section?
it's not that wide.
Do we have a dimension on the width?
No, not inside. It's about 12 and a half.
So,
Feet
yeah,
wide.
the shelter's about 12.5 feet wide, and it's 8 feet tall at the lowest point.
I mean, do these shelters actually keep bikes dry?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've installed similar, not this exact model, but similar size shelters at other metro stations, actually.
Where have you
Um,
installed them? Can you-
We did one at Clybourne.
Clybourne? Okay.
It's about the same dimension, too. It's about 12 feet wide. It does a pretty adequate job.
Okay.
I mean, if there's obviously like a driving, hurricane wind kind of thing with rain, it's not going to keep the bikes dry, but, for most rain events, it'll keep the bikes dry.
Any other questions for now's an opportunity for the public, if there's any public testimony on this subject. You guys are worn out. All right, we can deliberate if we have any deliberations. I think I deliberated early, so forgive me for that. Any other commissioner comments or deliberations?
I would say it's probably more appropriate to go with more of an opaque lighting instead of the solid metal. The dark metal is probably more appropriate too, just so it does disappear. I do have a concern without using natural materials. The plastic just doesn't seem to fit in with the whole Lake Forest, way of building around. So I would maybe investigate using a thicker opaque glass that might be shatterproof. I know that might be heavy, but I just think, over time, the look of a plastic roof is just not going to age well and won't have that patina that we love in Lake Forest and natural materials. And I guess that's all I'm supposed to say about the shelter. I mean, I have real concerns that we're not seeing the landscaping plan because there's a lot of issues with the pathways, the materials, the terracing, the separation of the sidewalk and the bike path. I mean, there's a lot of issues there, so I'm concerned about that. I think we should be reviewing, if we've reviewed the house, basically, of the train station, we should be reviewing the landscape plan and the hardscape. So I would hope we would get that back at some other time, because this is such a focal point in Lake Forest, and it deserves our attention to be landscaped appropriately. And, there's big changes going on here. I mean, they're taking out parking spaces, they're making a bigger area here, even the location of we talked about the location of the stairway last time, the sidewalk, and what was appropriate. We talked about options, but we didn't make a decision, so I don't know, I guess maybe the process is confusing me a little bit here because it's so different, but I just think as our purview, I feel like that should just come back to us.
Other comments, questions, deliberations?
I guess I have deliberations then. And so, just to look at things from the standpoint of the standards, certain concerns arose for me. Standard 1, height. I note that from McKinley to the north, the proposed structure, I think, will appear to cut the historic train station in half. Standard 2, proportion of front facade. Again, from McKinley, the structure will have a long, low silhouette in contrast to the historic train station and Market Square beyond. Standard 3, proportion of openings. Again, being an open covered space over bicycle-related fixtures, the structure will have a proportion of openings, which is really very different than that of the historic train station or Market Square beyond. Relationship of materials and texture. Again, the material and texture of the structure being made of painted steel and plastic would seem to not be compatible with the predominant materials used in the historic train station and Market Square beyond. That's number 7. Number 8, roof shapes. Again, the roof shape of a structure, the structure will present, as I said, either arched or flat roof, which is quite different than the pyramidal cross-gable roof forms of the historic train station or the complex forms of the Market Square beyond. Walls of continuity. Since the walls of this are void, it is really quite different than the walls of continuity presented by other structures in the area. The scale of the structure, again, this is a low design, for better or for worse, and is quite different than the multi-story design of other buildings in the area. And the directional expression of front elevation, similar comment. Again, this is a low, long design, which is quite different than the shapes of the historic structures in the area. The only other comments I would have is that, to me, I went out and counted the bicycles again there. Underneath the existing structure, there are some 30 or 32 slats for bicycles. So that, and I saw 19 bicycles there today, and some of which were abandoned, so that one could remove what I agree are the relatively ugly bicycle, what you call them, lockup areas in front of the train station, and simply have all bicycles locked up underneath the existing shelter. And that existing shelter is to the untrained eye, architecturally compatible with the historic structures surrounding it. And then the last thing I would have to say about all this in my consideration is that because pedestrians can no longer cross from the west side of the tracks to the east side of the tracks, the location of this bike shelter is somewhat problematical. Particularly if an intention of the bike shelter is to encourage bicycle visitors to the businesses in Market Square. You have to go either to, I guess suppose one road south or one road north in order to cross. And so perhaps it would be better to put the any bike shelter, if you were going to introduce a new bike shelter, more closely to the train tracks if possible, or perhaps even to the west side of the train track, so as to really encourage people to go ahead and visit Gerhardt's or Jolly Good Fellows or the Wine and Cheese Shop. Those are my comments.
Any other deliberations?
I think the shelter meets the compatibility standard. You know, I think the contemporary design and where it's set, you know, complements the train station and the general business district. My only concern about it is the materials on the roof. As long as the city understands that, you know, that there's gonna be some maintenance issues in there and possibly replacement of that roof from time to time, so it just, you know, looks appropriate, I would support the petition. You know, I think, you know, putting in a heavy glass or something just is not something that the structure is contemplated or designed to, you know, to hold. It'd be nice if it, you know, if we could use that. I just don't think swapping it out is realistic. So I'm ready to support the petition.
Any other deliberations from any of you?
I think it competes with the existing structure, and I'm not in support of the petition at all.
Up?
Yeah, well, my only comment is that if we were to have a gable-type roof like we have on the station, it would be obscuring, it'd be much, much taller, be obscuring the view of the station more than this is by quite a bit.
So I'm curious, among the commissioners, if, because I hear a lot of concern for the polycarbonate roof, and I hear that there's a metal roof that might be available as well. Would that be worse, better?
Worse.
Worse?
I really think the lightness, to me, the lightness of the structure and the, you know, it's you know, the ability to see through it and, you know, into the general areas.
You agree with that, Sue?
Yeah, I think the plastic is just gonna yellow. It's gonna look horrible, I think, in a couple, and then why pay for?
So I
cheap
think you
replacement?
guys might be saying different things, though.
No,
I prefer the glass.
You prefer glass, but I mean,
Well, but an opaque or,
would be too heavy. An opaque would be
well, it would be too heavy. You need something with that lets light through
Got
and, you know, and it is my feeling about it. And, you know, the glass would do that, but I'm not sure that it's a practical solution, I guess, is, you know, my concern. To have something that would be that structurally sound that it wouldn't be in danger of, you know, it could be supported by the structure that's there and not in danger of breaking or, you know,
And
or
maybe,
failure.
just listening to your discussion, the commission could consider a couple conditions of approval with respect to the materials and the landscaping for that matter. That you could recommend that consideration be given to the roof material from the perspective of durability, appearance over time, and maintenance, so that we can go back to the manufacturer and really look at the options that are available for that with those items in mind. And you could also recommend that the City Council direct the landscape plan back to the Historic Preservation Commission for approval. But in general, that is part of the infrastructure project, which has been directed to the City Council. So those are two suggested conditions of approval that the Commission can deliberate on.
Well, those are good ones. They're both yours, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's conditions, you know, in any other petition, we would continue this, because there's too many things up in the air right now. There's too many questions here, so, I don't know, I mean, what could we approve?
Everything.
I mean, I don't know if there's
Well,
much
I
we
mean-
can approve right now. I don't know, it's up to you guys what you think.
So what is the timing of the improvements and the landscaping, just for us to understand?
We are fast approaching deadlines that we need to submit additional information for the grant applications that are in. We do need to let them know what structure will be built at this location as part of the grant materials. So it would be helpful to have action taken at this meeting.
You know, after Kurt said, you know, we shouldn't think of the economics of it, is the grant contingent on getting this design in at a certain deadline?
We do need to meet deadlines for the
But-
grant application. So they have to review the proposed structure from their criteria as well. So we're trying to work within the parameters laid out through that process, as well as follow our process here.
So do we have a hard deadline that you know of that we are trying to meet right now?
I don't know the date off the top of my head. I know that it's very soon. It's coming up.
So I'm just thinking if we continue this and we address like your question for an option of traditional structure, let's see some options for that because we can see that. Maybe look at the different options for the top. If
Could the,
glass would work. Let's look at a landscape plan and then bring it back and answer all our questions and then we vote on it.
Well, Susan, could you live with if there's different materials available, could you live with them bringing it to the chairman to look at and see if that's a possibility? Sorry.
I don't want to do it.
I mean, if you can, I understand. I'm
Yeah.
just, we've done things like that in the past, where,
Typically what we do when we have a subcommittee is that's when we have kind of a uniform kind of opinion as a commission, and we appoint 1 or 2 or 3 people to be the arms and legs and go work out of the field to pick a brick color, for example. And everybody on the commission knows we're trying to pick a compatible brick color. It just comes down to, can somebody please show up on site and tell me if it's red or orange and if it matches the old brick? And so we get a subcommittee, we do that. I think here we would want to give the petitioner direction on the petition they've asked us to, do you approve it or not? Not, we'd rather have something else, because that's a no in my parlance. We don't continue this so that we can see what else we got. We either say yes or we say no. And if the only thing we don't know about this is landscaping, what I wanted to know is if this is getting built next year, next spring, for example, and you're not going to landscape this fall, I assume.
The timing for construction, if all of the grants are received and the engineering work is completed, I believe we're thinking next year at the earliest for
Okay, so
construction.
given that situation, if we recommended a motion where we requested to see the landscaping again, you could go through whatever economic realities there are and come back with a plan for us to comment on with respect to the landscaping. That's relatively easy, I think, as a condition. With respect to the roof, I think that's a little tougher because we either have to give the staff some latitude to work with the manufacturer to make sure that they're happy with the product from a performance point of view, and tell them that we like it from a design aesthetic if that's the case, or we have to tell them, no, we just don't like it, and do something differently, or we'll just say no. And I think that's a decision we have to make, I think, today. So.
Well, the reason I asked about the budget was because I think someone said, well, this was an affordable option, this was the most affordable solution or design. So that's why I asked, what is the budget and how much is this project costing? And is there room for a better design within this whole project? If we did want to, somehow, if more money did want to get spent on this, would we be able to achieve a better design?
Megan?
I would just respond to that by saying that we did look at other options. We did look at a more traditional form, but in this location, something that was really light and open seemed more appropriate as something that would just fade away into the landscaping, something that could be easily screened, something that wasn't heavy, wasn't bulky. So it's more than just an economic factor. It was really looking at it from a design standpoint and what would allow views through the
So
bike
this was your
shelter.
preference?
Correct.
Any other comments, deliberations, questions? Is there any sort of consensus? Anybody want to
Well, Mike, I'm ready to approve
hazard
the
a motion?
petition.
A positive one or an adverse one?
Either one, vote on whichever way you guys want to do. Well, I guess I would hazard I would ask if there is a motion in support of the petition with the conditions. If there is, then I would entertain it, and I would ask if there's support for it. If there's not, then there wouldn't be, so.
I move to grant a certificate of appropriateness approving the location and design of the bike shelter at the East Lake Forest train station, subject to the three conditions in the staff report, and with the two additional conditions that the staff consider with the manufacturer alternate the roof materials, including the durability and appearance. Was that the condition? Okay, and that a landscaping plan be returned to the HBC for further consideration.
So the motion's been made by Commissioner Ransom. Is there a second for that motion?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Alfe. And all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that's 1, 2, 3, I believe.
Yep.
And all opposed say nay.
Nay.
Okay.
So we have 3 in favor and 3 opposed. It's a resounding maybe, I guess. So that does not pass, and you can take that input to the city council. I think it's a tough petition to approve from the standpoint of the historic significance of the train station, and I certainly appreciate the point of view of the commissioners who did not support it. So enough said about that, and good luck. All right.
For your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next petition is another returning petition, continued consideration of a request for certificate of appropriateness approving additions and existing accessory structures at 1291 Elm Tree Road. I believe that there were no prior conflicts. I just want to make sure. Anybody have a conflict on this one? And I see none, so please make your presentation.
Just something you have the way.
I know I can.
Good evening. My name is Bill Sturm. I'm with Serena Sturm Architects, representing the McKerney in their petition. The McKerneys intend to, or hope to, improve the kind of the 12-month usage of their property. And I'll walk you through that. The notion is to make it safe and comfortable for exercising with existing facilities upgraded. I just thumbed through for those I think many of you have visited the property, but these are images. The property is assembly of various structures over a period of time. I would say compatible, but not always exactly representative of the original structure. I'm sorry, I should go back. This is the existing home, and what we refer to as the pool house, and often to the distance exercise pavilion. All of those structures are reached by leaving indoors to go back outside to go indoors again. And that is the pool and the associated pool house. Now, I'll try to be brief in this and certainly open it to questions. Excuse me. This is the structures as they exist. The residence, space between the residence and the pool house, a fitness pavilion, and a pool that is kind of a regular shape. This is the improvement to that as you overlay it. There's an interest to connect. I'm not doing very good with this, am I? There's an interest to connect the existing building residence to the pool house via conservancy structure that would be effectively a breezeway for 3 months of the year, and for those, 3 months, seasons of the year, and for those times of inclement weather, could enclose in those cold months and allow for safe and comfortable travel to the pool house. And also a second conservancy structure that would offer entrance to the pool in a climate-controlled way during 12 months of the year. And lastly, an expansion of the fitness pavilion, rather modest, 6 feet, to the east that would allow for the equipment and exercise pads and things that kind of have to be moved about in the pavilion currently. This is in bird's eye kind of a modeling of the existing conditions, and that the residents beyond the pavilion, fitness pavilion, the pool house, and the pool structure. And the interest is to make the pool a regular lap pool, consistent level, roughly 5 feet. And you can see in the, as I kind of outline it, the solarium structure that would kind of nestle between the fitness pavilion pool house to allow for entry into the pool. And that I'm showing this, or we are showing this, I should say, at a time when the pool is covered and the solarium is enclosed, but at times of the year, most of the times of the year of the nice weather, the solarium structure would be wide open, effectively, again, kind of a porch for the pool, and the pool cover would be retracted. And then we have also a real quick look at the connection from the existing building. It's kind of a oblique angle, but existing residence to the pool house, and an insertion of the breezeway structure during the worst weather months, and during most times it would just be left open and landscape proceed through it. Now, I'm going to back up just a second just to reference the last time we presented the overall, it seemed to be the consensus was that the intention was sound. There was some concern as to the detailing that we showed in our modeling of the conservancy structures. So we've kind of expanded that detailing in the modeling, and frankly expanded that knowledge in the time with various manufacturers. The structures will be mahogany structures interior-wise, white to match the mullions of the existing residents, true divided lights. We've kind of, I think if I go to this feeling, there's a division of the windows up top that represents the windows on the upper stories of all the existing buildings, and frankly a division of the windows on low that represents the division of the lower story windows. So we've tried to mimic that. There's also a detailing that we've used to kind of reference this to the historic periods of mostly the original residents. And those examples that we have been using for that reference either appear nationally or locally for our kind of inspiration. I should say too that the structures are all glass, and there's an interest on the client to pursue kind of a environmental ethic in the development of this project, and that would be represented in the overall. There's a trellis element or a pergola that wraps around the pool currently. That will be taken down, restored as the roof, kind of gutter roof area on the back side, and kept on the east side. We're hoping to reclaim as much of the pool decking material and reuse that. We are pursuing the notion of heating or preheating pool water by solar thermal, using green walls exterior-wise for aesthetics and interior-wise for kind of bioremediation of the air, in other words, a cleansing of the air. So it's hopefully to be a little exploration into what residents can do to work with existing materials, new creative materials, and frankly, energy use. That's it.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have a staff report?
Thank you, Chairman Pairitz. As was noted by the petitioner, this project was before the commission, I think back in April, with some conceptual ideas of connecting the various structures on the site with a glass and either metal or wood structure. At this time, the petitioner has put together more details. The project that's before you is a painted wood structure with glass. And really has minimal impact on neighboring properties. There's an extensive amount of vegetation on the property. It's tucked behind the main house, so you really can't see this portion of the property from the street. As proposed, the Conservancy designs are light, delicately detailed, and they have a minimal impact on the main house and the connections between the buildings. So there are positive findings in your staff report. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have this evening, but staff is supportive of this project.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions for the staff or the petitioner from the
I have a quick question.
commissioners?
Thank you for the clarification of the design. I think it looks much more traditional now as you intended than the last design. It looked more contemporary last time, so thank you for the clarification. It looks great. The one question I had, I don't remember talking about the new canvas coverings on the arbor. Is that a new addition, or had you always proposed it?
That was part of our original.
Okay, I must have
Yeah,
missed it.
currently
Okay.
there exist metal structures over the area, and our intention is, again, just seasonally to cover those
Yeah.
for shade and then take them down during the winter.
So it would just be pillars during the winter?
Excuse me?
Would you just have pillars during the winter, or, oh, you're covering the metal with canvas?
Yeah, and I can show you that. Here's the photo. It's a little hard to see, but see this wood structure right there? And beyond it is there's a series of metal pieces, and we're frankly just going to use that and use canvas over the top of it during the summer.
Okay. Oh, that's a nice option. Okay, that's all my questions. Thanks.
Any other questions for the petitioner or the staff? I see none, so I'll ask if there's any public testimony on this subject. And I see none, so now we can deliberate. We have any deliberations? Go ahead, please.
I note that a close neighbor wrote in support of the project, and that the Historic Preservation Foundation felt that the design had improved with this iteration.
Thank you. Any other deliberations?
I would just repeat what I said. I think it's an improvement from the last time. I think the intention was there, but it's nice to see it on paper. So I think it's a good design for kind of many different styles of outbuildings.
Yeah, how about that? A well-executed montage of styles. All right, I'll ask for a motion.
I move we approve the petition as presented.
All right, motion's been made by Commissioner Swenson. Is there any?
Athenson.
I'm sorry, Athenson.
Seconded.
It's not even that late. And seconded by Commissioner Ransom. Oh, Travers, I'm just kidding. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you, and wish you were first.
Bet you were sure.
You beat me to it.
Weren't going to say it, huh?
All right. We have a new petition. It's a consideration of a request for certificate of appropriateness approving an addition to the residence at 20 South Mayflower Road. A building scale variance is also requested, and I'll ask if any commissioner has any ex parte conflict on this. And I see none, so come on up and let us know what you got.
Good evening, Chairman and Commissioners. I'm David Polton, and I'm presenting on behalf of Tom and Diane Quinn, present owners of this property. The Quinns have resided and raised their family in this beautiful David Adler designed home since 1989. Throughout their ownership, they have proved to be the perfect stewards of this magnificent property. They have kept up the buildings, the properties, meticulously maintained it, and kept it original and intact. The Quinns have been really good for this property. They would like to stay here. However, Tom Quinn really needs to be in a one-story home, and it's not possible to stay in this two-story residence. So this could be a point in time when the destiny of this property is in question. Luckily, this is not the case. The good news is that the Quinns are planning on keeping the property in their family, as their daughter Katie and husband Tom Donovan will be purchasing the property and raising their 3 children here. Having grown up in this home and now having 3 young children, Katie and her husband know that having a mudroom space and an attached garage are of the utmost importance to them. We understand that attaching the mudroom and 2-car garage requires a building scale variance, but we feel justified in asking for your consideration because of the mitigating factors that diminish the appearance of building mass on this site. The slide on the screen is an aerial view that shows the wooded nature of the property and the great distance the building is set back from the street and from neighboring properties. The location of the work is indicated by the orange dot, and once again, you can see that it's not impacting the street, back very far from the street and any neighboring properties. The proposed addition in this location will not be seen from off the property. Typical of an American country house, the house was originally designed to have live-in staff present to help run the estate. This is not how families live today, and this proposal attempts to make the home more livable by today's standards. Currently, the most direct route to the carriage house is through the formal foyer, not conducive to practical use by an active family with 3 children. This is the footprint of the addition and showing how it relates to other buildings on the site. The proposed addition consists of a mudroom and a 2-car garage adjacent to the existing family room and kitchen. It is a 1-story tall addition, the same width as the existing service wing, which the existing service wing is 2 stories, so this will be a subordinate addition in height. This is a larger view of the mudroom and the 2-car garage. It's a very simple and minimal addition consisting of utility space. It consists of entry doors to the front and back, a powder room, closets, and a 2-car garage. The concept of the exterior is to extend the existing architecture in a quiet manner, continuing the patterns of hierarchy and detail found in the original building. The wall planes are whitewashed brick. The wall planes of whitewashed brick will continue uninterrupted, but with a lower elevation and subordinate roof line. The hand-formed clay tile roof will be duplicated. The windows and shutters will be duplicates of the existing in every detail. All construction methods and materials of the original building will be extended into the addition. The painted true divided light garage doors are taking cues from the original carriage house doors. The north elevation consists of a 1-story gabled wall, which will be covered in ivy and recede into the landscape. This is a view as the wall will appear once it is covered in ivy. This is a key to help orient what the location and viewpoints of the next 4 photographs. The first view is standing on Ringwood and looking north towards the property. As you can see, it's heavily wooded and no buildings are evident from the street. The second view is a little farther up on Mayflower. a little farther north. And then this is the main entrance to the property from Mayflower. And this is proceeding up the driveway a ways, and as you can see, there are no buildings evident even as you approach the property onto the driveway. This is a key showing where the next 4 photographs are, and they are taken approaching further up the driveway and then entering into the drive court. Proceeding towards the drive court, by design, your eye is pulled toward the carriage house. And while this is a sizable building, it does not dominate the view, but instead is nestled harmoniously into the landscape. Only as you enter the drive court, you begin to get a glimpse of the main facade of the building. Upon entering the drive court and facing the front elevation, there really is an illusion that you are standing before a much smaller scale home due to the masterful siting and attention to placement of landscape. There is almost no evidence of the flanking right and left wings. And behind the drive court is the beautiful carriage house, softly delineating the formal space from the service space to the rear. The next 4 photos, shown by the arrows and the numbers, are showing where the location of the addition is proposed. This is standing at the driveway, showing the 7-foot wall encompassing the private garden, creating a visual separation between the drive and the house. The landscaping only allows slight glimpses of the building beyond. This is a view of the area where the new garage would be placed. This is looking from the driveway. These spruce trees will remain and serve as a buffer. This is the area where the new addition will join into the existing house. And then this is a view from the backyard looking towards the new garage. All the existing landscaping here would remain. The main reason we believe this addition will have almost no visible impact to the mass of this building is because of the master for planning regarding the original siting and placement of the landscaping. From nearly every vantage point on the site, the mass of the building is greatly reduced, and each view, by design, provides a unique perspective of the property. As an example, the main building is 156 feet in width, yet you only see about 45 feet in width of the main facade, or less than 30%. Once again, here's a photo of the house from the main drive court showing how masterfully the mass of the building is diminished. This is a view of the building that is almost never seen unless you drive into the service drive area. Normally, as you pass by, your eye is taken further up the driveway to the view of the coach house, and you look right past this view. This is the proposed landscape plan. It is showing that we'll be removing 1 spruce tree in the middle of the current driveway. It's showing that the arborvitae at the south edge of the driveway will be removed and replaced about 6 feet further south. It's noting that the existing species of pachysandra, rhododendron, ivy on the walls, and spruce trees will be planted at the building perimeter. The drive will be gravel to match the existing drives. The plan is to have the new portions of the building blend into the landscape as this portion of the existing service wing does. This is a photo mock-up of how the new building will appear once the landscape is complete. It is our intention to have the building sit quietly within and be dominated by the landscape as shown here. In closing, because of this unique situation, and because the increase in building mass will not be readily apparent either off the site or on the site, we feel that requesting the building scale variance is warranted and can be supported by these facts. The property is non-conforming due to the subdivision before the Quinns own the property. The proposal meets the required standards of the Historic Preservation Ordinance, and the proposal is consistent with the design standards of the city code. I'd also like to add that a letter was received in support of this proposal by the neighbor who owns the property directly to the east, Mrs. Wheeler. That's the parcel that is closest to the addition, and she was fully in support. Thank you, and I'll answer any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you. And I'll ask the staff if there's a follow-up report.
Thank you, Chairman Pairitz. Staff does recognize that the request before the commission this evening is a request for a significant building scale variance, but also I think it's important to remind the commission or note that evaluation of the requests is really based on the criteria in the code, and the code really doesn't give a magic number for granting variance requests. The code does require that the design standards be met, at a minimum that the design standards be met, and that one additional standard for granting a building scale variance is also met. In this case, based on staff evaluation, the project appears to meet standards 2, 3, 4, and 5. The home is set back significantly from the street. The height and mass of the proposed addition is subservient to the area of the home to which it's located. And the property is very unique in that you never really see the whole mass of this home. The home was very well designed by David Adler and really limits views to smaller scaled vignettes as you walk around the property. So based on that evaluation, staff is supportive of the request and the building scale variance, and the recommended action this evening is to recommend approval to the City Council. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Any questions for either the petitioner or the staff from commissioners?
I have a question, and I don't know who to direct this to, but you know, this is a significant request for bulk overage. And of course, that was based on the subdivision. But there are 2 lots in the front that really help to mitigate the appearance of bulk here. So I'm just wondering, what is the status of those 2 lots? Because if they do become buildable lots, or they are, and someone builds a house there, then it's a whole nother situation, which then the bulk could really negatively impact those people. So,
based on our research of those properties, there are 2 buildable lots that front along Mayflower in that location. So new homes could be proposed on those lots. The design of those homes would come before the commission per the ordinance requirements.
so is that a viable, I mean, are those lots part of the owners? Are they the owners right now, or are they some other owner that might decide to sell them? You know what I mean? Like, it might impact that decision.
The 2 lots that are adjacent to the parcel, one lot is owned by by Mrs. Wheeler, who wrote the letter in support. And this house was originally designed for the Wheelers, so she still retains ownership of that parcel. The other parcel is owned by the Quinns.
Oh, okay.
And that is not going to be, the Quinns have no intention of selling the lot. They do not want to see the lot built on, but that is not part of the purchase of this property, part of the main house property. So does that,
Right, so that parcel will be sold off then when the Donovans buy it?
No, it will not.
Oh,
The
oh.
Quinns will retain ownership of that property. And the Quinns do not want to see that parcel built on.
Okay.
However, that's just not part of the sale of the main house right now to the Donovans. It potentially could be in the future, and the Donovans do not want to see a home built on that property. So, I mean, that's really all we can say at this time.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I have another question too, so I'm at it. Dave, can you explain the garage doors? Because you didn't really review that, just the design of the garage doors.
Sure. maybe I can pull this, I don't know if I can zoom in here.
No, they're there.
I lost it. Okay, this, I don't know if you can see that very clearly, but those are the existing doors on the carriage house. And so we're taking cues from that. The white painted timbering around the doors would be the same. We're proposing a panel door with lights, very similar to this. There are some differences in that we wanted to make these doors a little bit dressier than the carriage doors on the original garage, although they're very, very similar, so that we have panels on the left and right. And they're really intended to look like bifold carriage house doors. I mean, this is a very traditional design. I know that there was a comment in a letter from the Historic Preservation Society, and I completely agree with those comments. This drawing that's on the screen has been revised. What was in the packet was actually something that was not as refined as this drawing. So hopefully that helps your understanding of the doors.
Yeah, I guess that was just my question too, why you wouldn't go with a more traditional looking carriage door. I mean, because you don't want to have your focus on the garage doors by making them so formal. You want it to be less dominant, right?
Well, I actually think this is a very traditional carriage house door. I mean, there's examples around town that are almost identical to this, where there are true divided lights on the middle two doors, a lower panel, and then the side flanking panels are actually panels and not true divided lights. So, I mean, I think, we're open to discussion about the doors. I think there's a lot of variations that could work nicely.
Okay, thank you. Oh, and Megan, I had just a quick question for you. I'm sorry. In your comments, you mentioned about the landscaping, that in lieu of planting, there's going to be some financial arrangement with the city. Could you explain that a little bit better?
The tree preservation and landscape ordinance does allow for the city arborist to evaluate landscape plans and collect a payment in lieu of plantings in situations like this where the lot is so heavily planted that it would not be within good forestry practices to replant the inches that are being removed, in this case the large spruce. He has reviewed the landscape plan for the property and does support the landscape plan as shown with the relocated arborvitae and the additional spruce tree. But because of the size of that spruce, there's opportunity to plant along the parkway in this area to improve the streetscape along this property line.
So the inch by inch would go to the parkway then, okay.
Any other questions or comments for staff or the petitioner? I'll ask if there's any public comment, and I see none, so we can deliberate. You might. Any deliberations?
I have, I think, one comment.
Sure.
And that comment is I have looked at the staff's considerations to be taken into account with respect to the building scale variance. And I note that those 6 standards are the standards prescribed by ordinance for use both by the Historic Preservation Commission and the Building Review Board. And so it seems as if there's a consistent practice in this, and that's been applied to this case. And the second thing I would note is that we do see a number of situations like this. I tend to think of houses like this as manor houses. They're very large structures, very important residences, which were built in the era of F. Scott Fitzgerald, I imagine, and at the time the building scale variance was passed, these homes were from the start considered over bulk, and in a certain sense, the increase in bulk being contemplated here is quite slight. If I'm not mistaken, from about 9% increase in bulk. And I walked the grounds this morning, and even looking within the four corners, well, it's not the four corners, even looking within the lot does not feel crowded to me. And my back of the envelope calculation indicated that there probably is more than 2 acres of unbuilt upon land still on the lot. So I just mention that.
All right, thank you. Any other deliberations from commissioners?
I just want to say it's a brilliant way to add on to it. I really like it. It's extremely sensitively done, and I think it's fine. I don't think that the lot that the Quinn zone will be built upon. So I think that we have to look at that as the existing lot and look at that in terms of the overage.
Any other deliberations?
Well, that's why I asked that question.
Right,
Because,
right.
I mean, considering, because if those 2 lots did sold, that would make this bulk overage a different kind of request. I mean, this is a really significant request, so we have to make sure we understand
So
this.
it's, at the very least, it's helpful that the adjacent owners both support the petition.
Right, exactly. It's almost like they're both family, right?
Hope they do.
I mean, to me, it seems like they're both family. This is weird, I grew up in this and then the
But it's
twins,
so sensitively done that I don't think that,
Right. And,
It's
you know,
making a
really,
huge-
to take something, a beautiful traditional house and make it functional for today's family, I mean,
Right.
it's a modest addition. So, I think it was very sensitively done. I would just ask that you look at those garage doors and maybe make them more Adler traditional carriage house. Just, I know, you know what we're talking about. So, just so you don't want to make the garage doors the more dominant feature, I don't think. You'd rather see the door. So if you make, too much glass on that garage door, it might be the first thing you see, and you don't want to do that. You want it to blend seamlessly. And I think there was another point about maybe putting some screening in between the 2 drives, so so your focal point is more towards the front door, and you don't see that as much, because I think you're losing some there. And what else did I want to say? But I think it was done very well. So thank you for the thorough study, too. It was really interesting.
All right, I'll ask if there's a motion on this one.
Prepared.
Thank you, I'd like to hear that one.
I move that the commission grant a certificate of appropriateness for additions and alterations to 20 North Mayflower Road, including approval of a building scale variance not to exceed 76.5% over the maximum allowable bulk, a 9% increase from the existing condition, all based on the findings stated on pages 1 through 5 of the applicable report by city staff dated August 28, 2013, as well as the testimony submitted to this commission and the commission's discussion. The approval will be subject to the conditions of approval set forth in numbered paragraphs 1 through 4 on page 5 of the staff report.
All right. Motion's been made by Commissioner Travers. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Ransom. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And congratulations, relatively easy. Good luck with that. Thanks. All right. We have a new petition for consideration of a request for certificate of appropriateness approving a driveway gate and pillars at 1015 Spring Lane. And I'll ask the commissioners if there's any conflict on this. And I see none.
Good evening. Good evening. Chairman and board members. My name is Sadie Babineau. I'm a project manager at Lake Forest Landmark Development. I am representing the homeowner, Marcus Lamanis. He's unable to be here. We are proposing to install 2 pillars and a driveway gate on this property. The pillars will be 5 foot tall, 20 feet back from the road, and will be constructed of masonry and limestone to match the existing house. The pillars will have raised plaques, one of them the house number, the other blank for symmetry. The pillars will be illuminated with properly shielded, low-level, low-voltage lighting shining on the plaques. The gates will be wooden and will be painted cream color to match the existing trim of the house. We feel there's a great need for these gates for privacy and security due to the heavy foot traffic on Spring Lane to and from the beach, as well as adding an additional layer of protection for the pool in the backyard as Mr. Lamonis, I'm sorry, he travels quite a bit. The gates are designed to be nestled into the existing landscaping. We feel that the photo or the drawings explain or show what we're doing.
All right. I'll ask the staff. We've got a report.
Thank you, Chairman Pairitz. Just a couple comments. This petition is before the commission. Given the change to the streetscape, I will say that there already is a formal character to this property along Spring Lane. It is a newer house. The landscaping has been in place since the house was built. The proposed gate and pillars continue that formal hedge along Spring Lane, and the materials that are proposed are compatible with the existing structure. The same brick can be used with the pillars and then the wood gate, painted wood gate to match the trim of the house. There are findings in support of the project in the staff report. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have, but staff is recommending approval of this project this evening.
All right, thank you. Any questions for the petitioner or for staff?
I have a question about the plaques that are proposed. Was consideration given to just having one plaque for the numbers? It seems like the second plaque there feels like it's missing something. It's kind of blank. It strikes me that just a plaque for the numbers might be appropriate and just brick for the other pillar. So if your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's drawn or it's proposed for symmetry, and there's other pillars in the neighborhood and throughout Lake Forest where they do the same thing. They add, the columns or the pillars are symmetrical.
Question. I take it this gate is manual?
Pardon me?
The gate
No,
is manual?
automated.
Oh, it is automated. So you haven't shown the other elements. There'll be a little metal post with a card thing to enter in and so forth out forward of that, is it?
Right.
Where will that be? There's anything in the site
I
plan.
believe it's probably about 7 feet out so that you can pull up to the gate.
So just inside the property line?
I'm commenting on that, and I'm really not sure of where it'd be located. It could be actually actuated through an iPhone or, iPad, some device.
There won't be a treadle or anything like that?
Oh, a what?
There won't be any treadle or something they drive over to?
No, I think the gate is designed for privacy and security. So anybody coming through that gate either needs to have access through their own means or to be let in through the phone system of the house. It'll be either a code. I'm assuming there'll be either a code on the pole, or it'll be through iPhone device.
What color paint will the gates be?
So cream, the existing trim on the house is a cream color
And
and
the
red.
steel rods will be black or brown?
Pardon me?
And the steel rods?
No, that's
The hinges, you mean?
Brackets, you mean?
Those are wood panels.
Oh, the panels.
These
Oh,
are metal, those are
okay,
brackets.
okay. I thought they were steel rods that were
Does
coming
say
through the
steel
wood.
It'd be I would
oh,
imagine
okay.
it's a black wrought iron.
Well, the design does say steel, painted steel rods.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I would imagine.
Rods
It's gonna be
coming through?
rods,
Oh, yep, they are.
Okay.
Painted steel rods.
Okay.
I thought they were boards.
yeah.
Oh, that's the vertical part, yes. Yeah. We also have steel straps. These are the straps.
Yeah, yeah, no, I was talking about these rods.
Okay.
So what color will they be?
Probably all the same.
I am not sure.
Okay.
Actually, personally, I actually like that openness to this gate. I'm not asking a question, I suppose I should be. Why would you use open steel rods?
The architect, I'm sure had a vision in mind.
That was a softball, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you can see the house in the distance.
Yeah.
It's a very, very attractive vista down the driveway now, and it's actually one of the things that I lament a little bit is the loss of that when you drive by, because it is so nice. And actually being able to see a little bit, peek through the gate a little bit, I think is nice. I think that's a nice gesture for myself. I do think that it's a reasonable question that John asked, no,
Mary Ellen?
Mary Ellen.
whoever asked about the location of the, if there's a device for someone.
Oh, Bob.
Bob, thank you. And it seems quite a pedestrian problem, but when the pizza guy comes, how does he get there? So that is an interesting one. I suppose that the homeowner would have a fob that he just hits and the gate would open for him, but, so, I mean, I think that's a potential detail for staff to wrestle with. I'm sure you have a standard for that kind of thing. Other questions for either the staff or the petitioner?
Well, I have a question on the lighting too. So if you're saying that on the west pillar, there's no signage, why would you need 2 lights?
I think it's to balance the entry to the house.
But there's no need to light that
Yeah,
western pillar?
It would be an aesthetic thing, where you
It's a
have
really, really very formal, symmetrical kind
Yeah.
of look down the driveway
Yeah,
with
the
the
George-
landscaping and the court and the entrance to the house. So I appreciate, personally, I appreciate that they're trying to hold that tight all the way out to the front door, even though you're lighting a plaque that doesn't say anything.
Maybe they should put a motto.
Yeah.
But Megan,
pluribus
didn't you have a
unum.
condition in your report about that?
It's a good place for the key code.
In other cases, in this neighborhood along Lake Road, Spring Lane, it is a very dark street. So the recommendation is really to just have a single light pointed at the address, consistent with other address plaques around town, really to maintain that right to night concept in Lake Forest.
Yeah. That would be my question, since there's no obvious need, functional need to have that, okay.
Question, Mary? Ellen? You get your finger up.
Oh, no, I was just holding my pen. But I still can't get through those steel rods.
You can't-
Inserted, I can't get over it. Inserted into the wooden fence with the
I would
limestone
imagine-
top and the brick. It's 4 different building materials within like a 2-foot square, which is kind of against one of my golden rules.
Didn't know it.
I would say the strapping, it kind of ties that metal strapping, and you see that metal strapping to simulate a hinge.
And that'll be black.
I would imagine it's black, so I would imagine, I don't know for sure, but I would imagine that these steel rods would also be black
With probably a cream or white.
with cream. The wood of the gate would be cream to match the house.
Okay, other questions for the petitioner? I see no other questions. I'll ask if there's any public testimony, and I see none. So now's an opportunity to deliberate, if we have any deliberations.
Well, I want to make a comment about the lighting, because in Megan's approval, she said just keep it 1 light.
One light in the approval?
And I think, you know, based on the right to night and also the functional need,
Mhm.
you know, if there's only one need for one light, really.
Other commissioners have any comments on that? Supportive or not?
Well, I think minimal light is
Okay.
appropriate in any place, you know,
Okay.
so.
Do you nodding your head in agreement with that?
I agree.
Okay, all
I
right,
agree.
that's what I was asking, great. Other deliberations or comments besides that one? Good pickup there, Susan. All right, I'll ask if there's a motion.
I'll go to one if you wish. I move that the commission grant the certificate of appropriateness to allow the construction of 2 entrance pillars and a wood driveway gate, wood and steel driveway gate, at 1015 Spring Lane, based on the findings presented on pages 1 and 2 of the applicable report by city staff dated August 28, 2013, as well as the testimony submitted to the commission and the commission's discussion. The certificate of appropriateness granted will be subject to the conditions of approval set forth in numbered paragraphs 1 through 3 on page 3 of the staff report.
All right, the motion's been made by Commissioner Travers. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Athenson. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I see none, so that's approved.
you.
Congratulations, and it looks like you're not done yet.
We got one more.
All right, so we have one more here. It is a consideration for request for certificate of appropriateness approving the demolition of the residence at 985 Spring Lane. There's no replacement structure proposed. The property is intended to serve as an extended yard for the neighborhood resident to the east. And I assume since we had no conflicts on the last one, that we have no conflicts on this one. So jump on in and tell us what you got.
Well, Mr. Lamonis purchased that property for the purpose of opening up the property and so that no one else would do some development next door. He would like to demolish the existing older caretaker cottage. We have done research on this property, and it was built in 1972 and has been found to have no historical significance. The caretaker's cottage has been remodeled several times. Attached garage was turned to a living room. The chimney and a bay window were added to the front. The garage, however, appears to be an older structure. However, we could not find record of when it was built. It appears older and could have been part of the original estate to the south before the property was subdivided. We plan to leave the garage as is, except for a few cosmetic repairs, some rotten wood on the garage doors, and some roof repair. The house will be replaced with a very desirable, expansive garden, and the driveway and courtyard will be removed and replaced with sod. We feel it will combine the properties visually, opening up the vistas both from inside and outside the property, and that it greatly improves the streetscape. It will appear more open as you walk or drive down Spring Lane. It will have more of a park-like setting. That's it.
All right, thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, Chairman Pairitz. This request is unique for the commission to review a demolition request without plans for a replacement structure. However, the ordinance does allow for instances where no replacement structure is proposed for an extended period of time, that this type of demolition request can be considered by the commission. In this case, the property or the building used to be associated with the estate home directly behind the property on Spring Lane. Several years after it was constructed, the property for the caretaker's cottage was actually subdivided off and became its own zoning lot. The home, from an architectural standpoint, is pretty standard of 1970s construction. Based on the information presented by the petitioner, which includes permit research, review of historic maps, and data available through city records, there was no found historic or architectural significance for this home. With that, The project does appear to meet the demolition criteria that the commission uses to evaluate this type of requests. There is no replacement structure proposed, as the demolition of this structure will allow for a larger yard for the property directly east. I'd be happy to answer any questions, especially since this is a unique project, but we are recommending approval as submitted.
All right, thank you. And I'll ask if there's any questions from commissioners.
You know, Megan, I have a question for you to kind of search back in the history of this property. Because I remember back in 2006, this was very controversial, this, the building of the next door. And I don't really remember why, but it had to do with the demo. So is there anything back from 2006? The HPC reviewed it, I'm assuming. Was there anything back with the demo back then of the house next door that would have impacted the demo of this house? Was there some kind of condition that, I mean, I'm just wondering if there's anything from 2006 that we should be aware of now.
At that time, these properties were not in common ownership, so it's unique to this particular property owner that he's purchased both properties, and therefore this request is allowing for essentially an expansion of his property to the east.
Okay, so there's nothing we should be aware of from 2006 that might
Not
impact
that
our
I can
decision
recall.
today? Okay. Now, the other question I have is, since usually when we do a demo, we see replacement structure. In this case, the replacement structure is the landscape plan in the garden. So shouldn't we be reviewing the landscape plan in the garden?
Yes, the restoration plan was indicated in the commissioner's packets. It's pretty basic restoration. It's restoration to lawn and some removal of the fencing along Spring Lane and replacement with a landscape hedge.
But I don't see a landscape plan in our packet.
It's written on the plat of survey. It's text versus graphic.
But didn't he say there was going to be some extensive landscape plan done?
They're going to create a garden in that area, and then they're replacing the driveway and the courtyard with sod.
Okay, I guess that's just my question. If shouldn't we be seeing the replacement, whatever the replacement is, shouldn't we be reviewing that and approving that? I know this is an unusual petition, but that's just, I think it's strange we're not reviewing a landscape plan if that's a replacement structure.
I mean, actually, as far as I can tell, the specific request shows it all just being sod, other than the removal of the fence and the replacement of a 6-foot-tall clipped hedge at the where the fence is being removed. You got trees remaining along the fence. The portion of the fence that's removed between the two properties, if you will, and some removal of some unhealthy shrubs. But there's not an indication that there's a further garden, so I think with respect to the request, we have to assume that the replacement is basically what's being requested here. I suppose
Except
that the
for his
land.
presentation.
I'm sorry?
Except for his
Yeah,
presentation.
I understand that's a question, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just got it out of the description, I believe.
Yeah, so there you go. It's in the description as a expansive garden. And it's in the, on the survey as basically as sod.
Lawn.
In this case,
It's
I
all
would
lawn.
say that the landscaping along the streetscape is really what the commission should be reviewing. With respect to small gardens on the property, those can go in at the property owner's discretion. I think it's important to require that the ground be restored so that we don't have a pile of dirt where the home was removed. But certainly the continuation of that hedgerow is affecting the streetscape and appropriate for the commission to weigh in on.
I'm confused about that thing. No, according to this, what it says on there, it just says, remove fence from the corner to the gate. What about all the extent that goes all the way west from there? Is that all coming down? It doesn't say that. So.
There is a gate, or a wooden fence that runs from the northwest corner of the 985 property, and it runs all the way to the wooden gates. or the brick piers with wooden gates.
Okay, so that note that's just up in the right-hand corner of this drawing is not referring to just that little section, it's referring to that whole front property line, is that right?
Is that on the plat?
Yeah. See, there's a note up there, it says remove fence from corner to gate.
Can I ask a question about that to follow up on?
Sure, please, go ahead.
That doesn't even make any sense because I went out to look at the project, and what's happened actually
It looks like new fence.
is hundreds of linear feet of stockade-style fence have been erected.
New fence.
Are being erected, and and of course, the stockade-style fence is discouraged by city design guidelines, and so, given that we just spent all this time talking about a little gate, I'm a little surprised that this really imposing stockade fence didn't come before us, because it's hundreds upon hundreds of linear feet of fence, brand new.
That was an in-kind replacement for fencing that was there.
Yeah, rotten.
But is your understanding then that the entire Spring Lane fence is going to be removed then?
My understanding is just that portion in the northeast corner
Well,
will
that's
be
what it says. So that means
removed.
from the existing gate west, all that fence is going to remain.
That's my understanding of the plan.
From the existing gate of the 985 property.
All the way west from there, that fence
Yeah.
will remain.
Yeah, there was a rotten wooden fence there.
And surrounding the property.
Well, yeah, it's around.
Yeah. And then from that point, it's a 5-foot hedge behind the 2-foot hedge or 3-foot hedge.
That's just from the gate east, right?
From the gate, not the gate on 1015.
No, the old gate east is the only part that looks like it's being removed.
Correct.
Yes.
And the rest of
Well,
it's
and
gonna
then
remain.
from that gate, there is a small section. There's a post there, and then the 5-foot tall hedge that sits behind the existing hedge will continue to the 1015 property gate.
So effectively, there's a public kind of entrance to this home, the home that will remain, and then there's a private portion of the yard which is behind the fence.
Right.
Right. There,
It looks like Fort Dearborn.
the driveway will be removed on the south side of the new fence. The curb cut will remain intact.
Can I ask a question of staff?
Sure.
How is it that we're called upon to rule about, a small gate, and are told about, a small amount of stockade fence being removed, and yet it doesn't fall within our purview, this really, really substantial stockade fence that has a tremendous impact, I would say, on a streetscape. You want to talk about streetscapes, tremendous impact on the streetscape. Why isn't that something that we consider, particularly, whether it complies with city design guidelines or not?
Good luck with that one.
Go ahead.
As Ms. Newman said, it was a replacement. There has been a stockade fence there for years and years and years and years, and the request was simply to replace the stockade fence in kind. And the code does permit that with any,
So
without any
that's really
specific
the
review.
answer is that
That's the
the
answer.
code permits it, and so the staff is entitled to enforce the code. And so if someone would want to change the ordinance with respect to fences, that's available for the political process to attack. We've talked about fences ad nauseum over the tenure of my involvement in this commission, and we give it a lot of lip service, but we never are quite ready to tell a person that we don't like your fence and you can't maintain that fence. We have lots and lots and lots of fences in Lake Forest, And we have lots of private citizens that like their fences, and so it's a tough one for that reason. But I appreciate that it's not always the most attractive feature of some of these houses, particularly in the, these neighborhoods where there's substantial areas of landscaping to deal with. So it's a little bit unfortunate perhaps, but I think it's not the staff's position to change the ordinance. It's,
Oh, I
Yeah.
understand. Chairman, my question was only, since it seems to be very directly a part of the project, I mean, I understand that it's a replacement of an existing fence, right? But since it seems to be very directly a part of this project, which is before us, it seems like a pretty close cutting and chopping to say
fair enough.
the biggest part of this project is not, and that's all.
I bet
That's
they
why
got,
I'm
I
surprised
bet they
we
got the
don't
fence permit.
That's why I'm wondering where the
Nobody will
landscape
ever
plan
see it.
is, just so we know exactly what we're talking about.
It's very beautiful. If you drive by, it's that whole streetscape is very beautiful.
Are we making comments or asking questions?
Well, we were asking questions, so I'll ask if there's any more.
I have another question.
Oh, another question, let's go.
Okay, and so the other question I had was for the owner, and my question was whether a qualified preservation consultant had been engaged to review this project, and specifically with respect to its compliance with the 6 standards prescribed under the ordinance of demolition.
I'm not the homeowner, I'm the
I understand.
representative. I would imagine my boss, John Krasnodebski, would have, I think he's qualified to do that, right?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Has he prepared a written report on the, is he a qualified, there's a defined term, qualified preservation consultant?
Well, we know it's not a contributing structure. We know it was built in 1972, so that answers a bevy of those questions, I think, between the two. It doesn't seem like the staff has any question about the relevance of the structure as part of the historic fabric of Lake Forest, and from just the pictures of it, it doesn't lead me to believe that we should be beating that up too much myself.
I don't mean to bring up anything, though I feel like it. My only point is that, the story of Lake Forest isn't just the story of the people who, were the grandees, but also the people who served them. And this, that's part of the story. And this is an interesting house in that very late in the period of time over which people would actually have on-site domestic staff.
Well, we know it
This
was built.
constructed
We know it was built for a caretaker, and we know.
by a very, very distinguished family in Lake Forest, and so I was asking the question whether, in fact, a historic preservation consultant, an independent historic preservation consultant, had been engaged on this at all. Because once it's demolished, of course, you can't put hunting on.
It may be somewhat informative to note that the Historic Preservation, whoever they are. Foundation, there you go, thank you. Didn't take note or exception to the historic value of the home, although they did lament the loss of another smaller home in the historic district. So. Any other questions for the petitioner or for the staff? I see no more questions. I'll ask if there's any public testimony on this subject. And I see none of that, so now we can deliberate if you, no, it's okay. I do it myself, especially as it gets later, but sometimes I do it right off the bat.
Right.
Yeah, I think the problem for us here, the challenge here is that we, like the foundation, a little bit lament the loss of smaller homes in this area of town, and we also like to understand as succinctly as possible how the reuse will affect the neighbors. And so there's a little bit of a, there's the approval, or I'm sorry, the materials showing sod being replaced, and then a description of this garden, which hopefully will be a wonderful garden that no one will ever see because it's behind a 6-foot stockade fence. On the other hand, I'm not sure that we have much criteria to deny this application, given the criteria that we have to evaluate. So I'm not sure where that leaves us, but
Well, I kind of disagree. I think we could, I would not be able to approve it because I think the replacement structure would be the landscape plan, which would answer the question about the fencing too.
all right, fair enough.
So, I just think maybe in the future, if there is a statement of intent that says there's an extensive garden, and the plan doesn't reflect that, then the petitioner should be requested to provide that for us.
And I'd like a little staff support on that remark. What do you think, staff? Are we being presented with the appropriate information to draw a conclusion here, or are we splitting hairs?
Normally, the landscape plans that the commission would see would not necessarily detail a garden. You would look at significant plantings, trees, areas of natural plantings, but it would not be unusual for a garden, and in this case, we don't know if it's an extensive vegetable garden, an extensive flower garden, wouldn't necessarily be the type of plan where you would see whether plantings are in rows or the species. A garden is a bit different than an overall landscape plan. So if you're comfortable from the staff perspective, we don't believe that in this case, the replacement, whether it's grass or garden, we know that the replacement of this house will be essentially an open yard for years to come. If anything is proposed, a structure is proposed on this property, it would require review and approval by the commission.
So, okay, thank you. Any other deliberations for folks?
My last deliberative thought, if I may,
So why
is
not?
that I would certainly feel much more comfortable approving this permit if we had a report from an independent preservation consultant providing a rundown on the history of the building and the site relative to the 6 standards in the ordinance.
Any other deliberations from folks? I'll just throw out that, my opening statement for all these meetings, I can dig it out here somewhere, talks about preserving the character and
Please don't.
such of the city of Lake Forest. I find nothing about the petition here, the request to remove this home, that troubles me with respect to that. It's a fairly, we just reviewed another home not too far away from this, with 17,000 square foot of house. It's like quite large homes in this neck of the woods. So I think it's okay myself, if they weren't tearing it down, I wouldn't mind living here, but
I know, right?
but I would support the petition. So any other comments for folks? I'll ask for a motion.
I'd move to grant a certificate of appropriateness for the proposed demolition of the single-family home and restoration of the property with landscaping, subject to the conditions in the staff report and based on the findings therein.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Ransom. Is there a second?
Second?
Seconded by Commissioner Swenson. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
All right.
Pass it.
Was that 2 nays?
Yeah.
Yes.
2 nays and 4 ayes, for the record. Were you a?
I was an aye.
You were an aye. Thank you. The
Thank you.
motion passes. Congratulations and good luck with that.
Who were the nays?
Both
Oh,
folks on the. All right, we have an opportunity for the public to address the Historic Preservation Commission on non-agenda items, if there's any such public interested in addressing us. And I don't see a mad rush for that, so I'm assuming that those folks aren't here. I'll ask if there's any other additional information from the staff this evening for us. All right, I'll ask if there's a motion to adjourn.
I move
The
that we
motion's been made by Commissioner
Second.
Travers, seconded by Commissioner Ransom. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And good night. Thank you.
good night. Thank you.